Y'all, welcome back. Today I'm excited to share with you the get ready of the month. My recap of everything I've loved during the month of June, the products I love, the techniques that I love, and just a little bit about life. I love this video. So without further hesitation, get cozy. I've got my massive bottle of water. So let's get cozy and get right into this video. Let's get started with prepping the base. Over the month, I've been using and loving this mini e.l.f. Power Grip Primer plus 4% niacinamide. What I found works really beautifully for this is to squeeze it into my hand. If it was in the pump dispenser, I would say it's 2 pumps, and then I spread it and pat it into my skin. It is gorgeous. I find when I rub, whether it was this or the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip, I find I really need to press it into the skin, and it really helps everything sit on top of it a lot more beautifully. For today, it's a very low-key day. I am getting about to the halfway point with this. I want to save it before I need to repurchase it, so I'm going to skip primer. If it's a day-to-day occasion, then sometimes I will do that. For my lip prep, I'm going to use the Flawless Forget the Filler Overnight Lip Plumping Mask in the center shade Sweet Daisy. They do intend for this to be like an overnight prep, but it has a little bit of a tingle, and I don't like the tingle for my overnight lip balm. So I find this gives a nice hydrating boost to my skin while it helps to bump them up thanks to the hyaluronic acid it contains. So that way when I apply a lip stain on top, it just stays looking more beautifully bumped and fresh versus drying out as some more traditional liquid matte lipsticks and stains can do. Before we go over the rest of my skin prep routine, let's start the makeup routine. And this is something I've seen going around social media, especially short form content. And I saw Jaclyn Hill upload a new video. I was very curious, so I checked it out, and she did this technique. So I'm like, okay, let's try this. I've really been loving the underpainting technique, which is something that's been around for years, but it was Ellen Beauty's short form content that really made me fall in love with it. So I continued to love my underpainting, which is just where you add some shadow and light under your foundation. For me, I find if I add depth under my foundation, unless it's a product that dries down very, very quickly, it can muddy the rest of my foundation. So for me, I've been focusing on just applying the light, the Rim Beauty Sweetener Concealer in the shade Fair 1, which is pure white. And anywhere I want to highlight, I apply this here. So where I want megawatt brightness, I like to apply it here to the temple where it's a little bit more hollow. So a trick with this that's been going popular around social media is once you apply your underpainting, whether you're doing light or dark or both, let it sit. You want to let it sit for as long as possible to dry to help lock it in place, and that will help you to keep it where you want it. You go right over top of it with a liquid or a cream foundation. It can move it around to places where you don't want it. I've also found using this very light shade right under my brow where I have the microblading tattoo, this helps to knock it out a little bit more. So when I go through to color correct and reshape, it's a lot easier. If it's a very glam occasion and I want a lot of brightness, I'll take it right here through my smile lines. I don't have aggressive smile lines by any means, and I feel like that's in big part to having excess weight. The weight definitely helps to plump up certain parts of my face, but I've been a lot more cognizant of my smile lines or nasolabial lines ever since I had the filler I had placed here dissolved. Oh my goodness, it's been over a year. It's almost been 2 years ago now I had it dissolved, and even when you have filler dissolved, it doesn't fully go away. But what was happening is my body hangs on to filler extremely well, so I was going every year to get my lip filler touched up, and we got to a point where even after a full 12 months, my lips couldn't handle a full syringe. So we started putting it other places, and we started doing the nasolabial, and then it started to migrate, and I got really puffy through my upper lip, which you couldn't really tell front on. From my profile, it was just looking a little off. So we did a full dissolve from the base of my nose, or the alar base, all the way down to the top lip. And then we decided to go ahead and dissolve my lips top and bottom for a clean, fresh start, which that is one of the most uncomfortable processes ever. The dissolver, while I've got my light on it and I'm going to continue talking, I'm going to now use my NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer in the shade Light to Vanilla. So this is where I want further brightening because this is a little bit more brighter than my skin tone, but anywhere I have hyperpigmentation or things I want to cover, I've been applying this here. Another fun note about this is if you are not talking, this process is very slap and dash, and it's odd because even though it's slap and dash, you are using more product. My makeup routine goes by a lot faster. If I'm not talking, doing my streamlined everyday makeup routine, I can have my full face done in about 20 to 30 minutes depending on how I want to do my eyes, which is unheard of, especially if I've got somewhere to go. I normally like to take more time, especially since starting like my gender affirming transition. Like there's a lot more to cover now. Like I've got unwanted beard shadowing to cover. I've got hyperpigmentation that is now more noticeable to my eye because I don't have contrast from facial hair. So there's a lot more now that goes into my getting ready than previously. So for me, my 5:10 makeup routine is only the days when I'm going to like the Starbucks drive-thru or something like that. I'm not wearing makeup, just sunscreen. So my day-to-day makeup life has become a lot more intensive, shall we say. But anyway, so going back to this upper lip situation, had it fully dissolved, and then I stopped doing the filler in my nasolabial area just because I felt like if it had already started to migrate like that after like a year and a half, I don't want to continue adding insult to injury. So I was just like, let's forego it. If I get nasolabial lines, I get them. I rather have that than a puffy upper lip. Another place I like to add a little bit of this lighter shade is just right here. So we are going to leave that on, let this sit just like it is. And now something I like to do is move on to my eyes. This is something that I've not seen any other creators do, but it's something that made sense to me. I'm going to use a Bobbi Brown Longwear Cream eyeshadow. This is in the shade Nude Beach, and I'm going to use this all over my lids to act like my eyeshadow base. And since this is a Longwear cream, it's just giving me something nice to work my future eyeshadow in. What I love about using this slightly darker shade is I can go through and go ahead and contour my eyes. So I'm going to go white, exaggerate with my shape. And this also allows me to fill in right at the root of my eyelashes. And this way I get a thicker looking lash without having to go through and do an eyeliner, because now the contrast between my skin and my lash has been softened. So even after I do my eye makeup, everything looks a little bit more defined. That's the thing that I really love about this whole underpainting routine. Since you're doing a lot of this under your base makeup, you can be so slap and dash, and then you apply your regular foundation. Any type of concealing that you might need to do in addition to this is done, and it just softly blurs everything to where things look a lot more perfected. I will normally do this here. This is when I will go brush my teeth, put my clothes on, whatever it is I need to do that I haven't done, or if I need to like touch up any of my curls or things like that, I will let this set on my face as it is for about 5 to 10 minutes. If I can get to the 10-minute point, perfect, because when I go to blend my foundation on top of it, it melts in. And I found this routine and doing everything as much as I can with a sponge makes it look so beautifully flawless, and it lasts all day long. And surprisingly, the thing I've gotten from a lot of my girlfriends is my foundation always looks nice, my skin looks nice, but they're like, what have you changed? It looks lighter, it looks fresh, it looks healthy. And it's weird because I'm thinking to myself, I'm wearing way more makeup than I normally do, but I think there's something about these different layers and how they're all applied and thinned out. Everything ends up looking a little bit softer and more natural. While I let this set on my face, we are going to move back to skin prep. Before I turned the camera on, I did a little bit of makeup prep as part of my skincare routine. And the first thing I did is I wanted to try out this product product I was sent from YesStyle. This is from CosRx. I love a lot of their serums, but I've never tried any of their lip products. This is the Honey Sugar Lip Scrub, and this is a very classic sugar scrub. I don't know why when I took this off, I was expecting and I saw that darker, and I was like, oh, is it gonna taste like a burnt sugar? Like, no, the taste is not great, but it's a very standard run-of-the-mill fine grit sugar scrub. I enjoy it. I will use it on days like this where I'm gonna use a more long-wearing stain product, but that's the only time I really use a lip scrub. For me, normally my lip scrub comes from moisturizing my lips at night with a petrolatum-based moisturizer like my CeraVe Healing Ointment, and then in the morning after I wash my face, I always like to use washcloth to wipe off my cleanser, and then I will use that washcloth and gently buff over my lips. That's my lip exfoliation. It's nice to have something like this when you need it, when you have a lip product that you know is prone to making your lips look less than ideal. Something like this can help just make everything look a little bit nicer. Would I go out of my way to buy it again? Probably not, but if you are someone who is into lip scrubs, you might really enjoy this. Something I've been doing on the whim, and I'm not normally someone who does a lot of manual exfoliants, but there was a video I was watching from Michelle of Lab Muffin Beauty Science, and she was mentioning she likes peeling gels or your more traditional gommage product. I purchased this from my local Asian grocery store, and this is the Beauty of Joseon Apricot Blossom Peeling Gel. Apply a thin layer, you begin to massage, and as you massage, it begins to ball up. What you're seeing there is mostly product peeling up on itself. A lot of people will tell you that it's your skin, that's all the dead skin. That's not what's happening. It's just the product balling on itself, and those little pills are what's going to gently buff the surface of the skin. Even though this is very gentle, I like to use this before special occasion makeup. So if I have a big dinner, a party, or just occasion I want to look my best, I will use this, and it just gently helps to brighten the skin ever so slightly. I really love it for those occasions. I want my skin prep to be extra perfect. Speaking of, when I'm going to do my makeup, like for dinner, a date, special occasion, I want things to look really, really beautiful. I've been loving the Numbuzen No. 4 Hydrating Mineral Glow. This is a really nice lightweight water toner. I had been using this in my evening skincare routine as a gentle exfoliating toner. After doing some research and looking at the ingredient deck and just using my own personal trial and error, I didn't really feel like that's the key point. Maybe the hydroxy acid is functioning more so as a humectant than an exfoliant. I use this on those special occasions as a makeup base because it has a slightly more viscous, watery texture, which makes it a great, almost tacky base to stick and grab onto the makeup. And then to finish off today's makeup prep, I used my Beauty of Joseon Relief Sun Aqua Fresh Rice Sunscreen SPF 50+, PA4+. I love this. This is third tube, phenomenal product. So now in my makeup routine, I've been seeing a lot of people do this step and then brows, and that's something I will do. So after I do whatever else I need to do, sit down in my vanity. Before I apply my foundation, I will use my brow product. So for my brows, I've gone back to the classic Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Powder Duo. The shade duo I have is Taupe. I mostly use the lighter shade, and I like my brows. I like the shape I have. I just like to lighten them up a little bit. Using my e.l.f. eyebrow duo brush, I just very roughly fill them in, focusing mostly on any sparse areas. I've never been a huge believer in the brows first, just because I'm like, oh, what if I get foundation or something in them? And now it's almost like if I get foundation in them or something, it's okay. Once I lay the foundation on, I find everything else just looks a little bit more polished. Base my brow with the lighter shade. I've also used MAC Omega eyeshadow. I have that in a MAC palette. I need to use that MAC palette in a future video because I love MAC. I feel like MAC needs to have like a big comeback because they have such great products. I leave my brows there, and then I will use a little bit of my Benefit Tinted Brow Wax. I use shade number 1. This is getting low, so I'm just trying to finish it off. I like it, but I prefer the e.l.f. Wow Brow, and I prefer the price point of the e.l.f. Wow Brow. What I love about this brow color is it has enough tint to make my brows match the color of my hair. So for me, it just makes everything feel a lot more harmonious. This shade 1 in the Benefit Brow Wax is described as a light, cool blonde. I find it a little bit more neutral than cool. Now we can start covering up this base. It's not been the full 10 minutes that I like, but it's okay. I am gonna revisit the Maybelline Superstay. I recently posted a community post sharing how I wore this to a summer barbecue or cookout. It was so hot. I think it was almost like 30 degrees and we were like 70 or 77% humidity. It was so warm. And I mean, you can see I'm quite fair. I need to wear lots of sunscreen or I burn. What I did is I had a lightweight denim shirt and brought that as like an accessory. I knew the strapless top I was gonna be wearing, which matched the skirt I was wearing. It would just be like it's one set and it's lightweight, it's breathable, and in that hot summer heat, it's gonna be easy to remove. But even with sunscreen on in that warm, hot sun, I grabbed that denim shirt and put it over me like a little lightweight jacket because it was the only thing that kept me from feeling toasty. And I wore that up until the sun went down. Even after the sun went down, it was still so warm and so humid. So I took it off. Now I can't get a sunburn and I just cooled down. But oh my goodness, I wore this foundation and it lasted all day. And you can see from that picture, it looked great. After I took that picture, I wore it for another 4 to 5 hours. Gorgeous. So the trick for me is to do this with a damp sponge and just start applying. When you apply it over top of your underpainting, it can look crazy, but have faith in the process and just blend. It's one of those things that you start applying it, you start blending, and you're like, oh no, what have I done? But as you blend, you see it just comes together and it's so beautifully perfecting. I love the hair down, but I need the hair back so I don't just get tons of foundation. But you can already see now a little bit better how the face looks. So the foundation, a thin layer, really helps to just look so beautifully perfected. And with my foundation, I find I only do anywhere between 1/4 to 1/2 pump at a time. If I do a full pump, it can get a little too heavy. So what I love about this foundation is the beauty of the restraint. I think for the cooler months, this is also gonna be a really gorgeous foundation with a more hydrating luminous primer. So I'm eager to try that out going forward. Between this and my beloved Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless foundation, I think I still prefer the Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless. For me, that's just such an easy grab and go foundation. I don't need to work with it as much, but this is really nice. And I think Maybelline puts like a 30-hour claim on this. I find it looks great for 12 hours, but I find the Maybelline Fit Me wears just as well. I find it looks a little bit smoother than this as it wears. And I just find that foundation looks so gorgeous all day long. So this is why I don't mind if I get foundation in the brows, so I can go through and touch up anywhere, but the bulk is done. And you can see now that I've blended around, you can see just how deep that Nude Beach eyeshadow shade is, but don't worry. Foundation's done. So we are gonna move on to doing a little bit more precision work. Back to my eyebrow powder. This time I'm just using a little bit of the deeper shade. I can go through and perfect. Most of the things I'm gonna need to perfect now are on perimeter. So just using my little eyebrow brush, I can go through and make any final adjustments I need to. Also, where I have that tinted brow wax on, it's gonna help grip. So anywhere I need that tiny bit of coverage, it's got an extra little securing partner on there. If something like that happens where my brush, when I'm taking it out, I take it somewhere I don't want to, don't worry, we are gonna tidy that up in just a sec. There we go. So now I've really been loving this little tiny Rare Beauty blush. I believe this came out as part of their like Stay Vulnerable collection to use along with their liquid eyeshadows. I love using this to tidy up around the brow. So I'm gonna go back to my NARS Soft Matte. This is also something I've done with my MAC Paint Pot. That's also really nice, but the shade Painterly is deeper than NARS Vanilla, so I prefer using it this way. Now I can also go back in now and brighten up the inner corner. So now using my NARS Soft Matte, I can go through, crisp up any of the brow that I need to. to. I can brighten up my inner corner if my eyeshadow came too far in, and I can also take the residual product and gently tap over the seam of the cream eyeshadow to start blending it. So I just gently tapped over the shadow, and you can see it looks a lot more blended here. It's not perfected. We're gonna fix it. And now whatever I have left, I'm gonna go through and just gently refine the top of the brow. I love this routine because you can just be so slap and dash. It looks like you put a lot more effort into it than you did. I'm going back to the Real Techniques crease brush I used to apply that concealer, and now I can go through and just further buff and blend, smooth the gradient between the cream eyeshadow and the concealer. In the last video, I shared with you a technique I've been doing where you create a little gradient of colors. Patrice Under Eye Brightener, and this is in the shade 010 Light Rose. Here, I always like to apply a little bit of color corrector here on the inner corner just to brighten things up, add a nice little bit of pink to the inner eye. I like to use a mirror further away from me because if I use my little handheld mirror, it's going to look like I have a lot more under eye darkness than I do. Most of my under eye darkness is just from the anatomy and structure of my face. So I like to be a little bit more light-handed with my under eye color corrector so it doesn't get too heavy. I like to add a little bit more brightening, so I want to go with something slightly warmer. Huda Beauty Faux Filter Color Corrector in the shade Meringue. I need to still do a little bit of color correcting around my mouth, so for that I'm going to use Huda Beauty Faux Filter Color Corrector in Peach. I like to add a little bit of highlight, so this is my e.l.f. Halo Glow in number 1 Fair. You can see this is quite a bit more peach than I typically use, but I enjoy this for creating like an end of summer bronziness. It's also going to help play into a slightly more beige tone of my top I'm wearing, and since I'm using a mix of like a warm white and a cooler white of like the tank top I'm wearing under, it's going to help create a similar effect with my makeup. Now I need to add some pink to the under eye, and for that I'm going to use my NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer in the shade Vanilla. A little bit of pink here will also help to take care of some dark discolorations I have. You can also use this to tie the more warm yellowy tones in my color corrector and concealer around my mouth, so that way everything's feeling harmonious. And now I'm going to use the L'Oreal Lumi Le Glow Blush, and this is in the shade 605 Dewy Bright Pink. This blush is really pigmented, so be careful. It's a really lovely formula. I'm going to apply it just right here. I'm saying be careful, and I am getting quite heavy-handed, but we'll leave that there. I can blend if I need to course correct later. We can do that together. To blend, I am going to use my Real Techniques Tapered Cheek Brush, which is RT449. Start at the inner corner with my color corrector and blend out. I like to start on the inner eye, so that way I'm loading up my brush with lighter colors, so that way now when I get to the blush, it will have something already loaded into the brush to dilute it, and I can use this to soften down a more intense blush. This is a great tip if you're someone who has something like the Rare Beauty liquid blushes, the L'Oreal ones, or the e.l.f., those more richly pigmented liquid blushes that can feel really intimidating to use. So for the sake of convenience, they sit in our drawer and they don't get used. This is a tip to sheer it out and make it look beautiful. And now you have this really beautiful flush that creates this really nice sun-kissed or sun-blushed look to the face. That's another trend I've been seeing pop up. I guess that's going to be something that we're seeing a lot more going into summer, because it's crazy to think that autumn is right around the corner, because my next video that goes up after this will be my first video of September, and September is when we kick off like all of our more traditionally autumnal things, like kids go back to school. I was talking to my mom the other day, and my youngest brother, he's in high school and he goes back to school, I think she said on August 17th or something like that, right after his birthday, and that is crazy crazy to think that back to school is just around the corner. Here in Canada, kids don't go back in for a couple more weeks, but it's just mind-boggling because it feels like summer just got here and now we are already looking at our end of summer glow up. We are looking into autumn and spooky season, pumpkin spice lattes. It feels so soon, but I have to say, I'm very excited. Now I'm gonna go back to that sponge and I'm starting off with the base that I used with my foundation. I'm gonna go just under where I applied that cheek blush, and now I'm gonna tiptoe into where I did the color corrector on my mouth and blend back. If you're someone like me who struggles with unwanted facial hair, you have PCOS or any other thing that causes unwanted shadowing around the mouth, like hair, melasma, anything that causes a dark pigmentation, when you do color corrector in one area, blend it out a bit. That way it blends a little bit more evenly. It's crazy because with the hair removal I've been doing, I treat my entire face and neck area, and it almost feels like my upper lip and the bottom of my chin, they haven't moved. My neck hasn't really changed anything, but it's almost like now from like here to like here, I don't really get hair. Unfortunately, the hairs that I am getting, they're almost like translucent, which is tricky because even the most top of the line lasers can't pick up a very lightly unpigmented hair. So the only real solution for that is electrolysis, which I want to knock out everything I can before electrolysis, because I've heard electrolysis is quite uncomfortable and it gets expensive because you need so many hours of it. So here is our foundation base. Look at how far it's come from that war paint of light colors, but now we have a perfect place to add our embellishments on and move forward. For powders, I've been keeping it simple. I'm using that same big vat of powder. So funny, I had a subscriber mentioned that this tub that I mix all of my powders in looks like a loaf of bread, and that's all I can think of when I see it now, which is so funny. I love that. Before I go through with my puff, I always like to use my foundation sponge. I use the point. This just helps to soften everything down. I have to say, I was very apprehensive in fully embracing the powder with a puff, but applying it on the sponge, working into your hand, and then going through, it makes the makeup look even smoother than if you apply it with a brush. It can get heavy. If you're not careful, you need to really work it into your hand, but when you do, it's beautiful. Something else I've been seeing pop up as a trend is this resurgence of a trend that we saw a few years ago called cloud skin, and now I'm seeing something that's called butter skin. A lot of interesting choice of words, but basically we are looking at very soft matte, and it's almost like a natural matte, because if you think about butter, it has a slight sheen, but it looks smooth. So you wouldn't want to do a full matte or even a velvet matte, because those are going to look a little too flat. We still need an element of creaminess to the skin. So a nice soft matte finish would be so pretty. I'm also going to powder right over my lids. I like to take a brush and just wipe everything off, any of that excess. I've shared in other videos, in the drawers behind me, I like to keep what I call my archive, which is products that were discontinued that I wasn't ready to part with. I had the idea that instead of letting those products sit there and go to waste, why not use them? I mean, I know a lot of creators don't like to use products they can't link, but sometimes that's not helpful. So I use the products that you have. If there's something I can think of that's similar to a product that's no longer available, I'll do my best to share, but this is mostly to encourage you to play with what you have instead of buying something new if there's already something that fits what you're trying to go for. So today I'm going to use the Balm Desert, which is a blush bronzer hybrid. The closest thing I have to this in my collection is the Gucci matte bronzer in number 1 Fair. Compared to this, Gucci Fair is slightly colder in undertone, and it is a little bit more matte in the finish. This bronzer, even though it's not shimmery. It does have just a little bit of a soft glow. You can see it gives a soft reflect, but once you blend it down, other than the slight variance in undertone, this is very, very similar to the Gucci matte bronzer. Now, if you're someone who finds the Gucci matte bronzer to be too warm, then you're gonna feel like this is too warm, because this does have a little bit more warmth to it compared to the Gucci. And if the Gucci's too warm, then you might really like the Laura Geller Bake Bronze and Brighten bronzer, but I feel like you might be better off doing a more rich, rosy plum blush, mix it with a powder foundation, and create your own custom bronzer. Also take a little bit of this here on the outside corner. And then when I saw that video by Jaclyn Hill, she applied one bronzer and then she took a more luminous bronzer and applied it on top. So for me, that made me think about this blush I've had for years. And unfortunately, this shade was discontinued slightly after I purchased it. This is from Ciate London, which when I was looking to see if any of these blushes were still available, I think the entire brand along with the brand Lottie London are just totally gone. Like, the site name for Ciate London says the domain is available for purchase, which is interesting. But this is the Ciate London blush in the shade In Too Deep, which is a really nice warm mauve and like a champagne. So I like using this as a really beautiful sunburnt blush topper. You can see this just adds a little bit more glow. It's a really soft focus. You can see it gives a little bit of luminosity, but this is a great opportunity. If you have a blush and a highlighter, you can always blend them together to create a similar effect. For blush, I'm going to use the 2AN Dual Cheek Blush. This is the older packaging. They do have an updated packaging where it has a clear window with embossed here, but this is the shade Love Rosy number 2, and this is one of the most soft focused matte blushers. It is matte, but it is by far anything but flat. Number 2 is a really great shade. If you're looking at seasonal color analysis, this sits right in that spectrum of neutral. So this is great for light spring, light summer. I love this formula. So I am going to start with the lighter shade in my Real Techniques blush brush. I've mentioned before, this is a little too big for my everyday blush placement preferences, but this shade is almost like in Korean beauty or East Asian beauty, shades like this are often used as like expanding shades, so it's going to add a firmness to the cheeks. It's almost like a matte highlighter. A lot of the things that we're going to aim for when you're using a light pink setting powder. So I'm going to use this to lighten and brighten the area to create just a softer look. And since this shade is so close to my skin tone, I can apply with abandon. Now, if I'm not doing a bronzy cheek, this shade does have a little bit more of a base color to it, but for me right now, it's almost like a setting powder. Think of this almost like that Charlotte Tilbury Heart Compact Duo, except this is a little bit more warm than that shade. That one has a little bit more of a pink, blue-based pink to it. Now I'm going to use the blusher shade and I'm going to apply this here. Another video I did throughout the month was the Guava Glow, and there was another emerging trend for the Strawberry Glow. The Strawberry Glow, I have to say, I really loved it, but the lip look is a little outside of my everyday comfort zone, especially like that more Sabrina Carpenter inspired like darker lip liner with like that cherry strawberry jelly look. And I personally like the Guava look. I like that bright fun pink. And a lot of my makeup looks, I feel like, have kind of been different tonal plays on those two videos. Today, I feel like I'm going for almost something in the middle with the look I have in mind. The cheek is definitely giving a little bit more guava, but I love that. It's like a warm coral pink without being really orange. Now I'm going to use the Peripera All Take Mood Palette. This was part of their Heritage collection, and this is a number 1. So this is definitely one of those palettes that can go either more light spring or light summer. I love this palette because you can be so slap and dash. It's wonderful. I'm gonna start off with this large matte pink. You can use this as an all over lid shade or even as a blush. I'm gonna use this all over just to lighten up my lid ever so slightly. It's gonna almost make that base feel a little bit more gray, but I feel like here you can just see how slap and dash everything is, and that really plays into the beauty. So now I like to mix the matte pink on this side with this one here just to create something that feels more akin to what I'm in the mood for. I have to admit, something I struggle with is I always try to count. So when I'm doing it, I'll do like 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes I just get in the groove and I forget to count. So then I have no idea if I'm even, but I hope for the best. And that's what I love about the sheerness of K-Beauty eyeshadow formulas. They're sheer, but they still give you a little bit of something. So you can really course correct as go if needed. I want to start off with this deeper shimmer that right over the lid for a little bit of a rosy bronze. And I like using this almost like a backdrop. So this is to add some depth to the eye. Here we go. I love that. It's one of those things that you can't really tell it has a sheen until you like the light hits it. But since I'm using it as a base, I'm gonna now use this slightly warmer pink. That right over the lid, using my finger, feeling the shape of the eye. Then I'm gonna use the white with my middle finger. Now, if you want to add eyeliner, you can. I just changed my mind, so I'm going to use my large flat brush, and I'm going to take this on the side of my brush, and I am just going to roughly sketch. This is a trick I talked about in my soft summer seasonal color palette video, and this is such a fun, easy way to do your eyeliner, and you can fade a wing so quickly with this. And the great thing is the shades and powders are so soft that if you're not totally symmetrical, no one's gonna know. Now for good measure, take your brush, soften through. Most of my balm is already gone away. I'm gonna blot it off. Now I'm gonna use a lip stain. I purchased this during the Sephora Spring Savings event. This is the Sephora Cream Lip Stain in the shade number 69 Hippie Pink. This is a very scary looking shade because it is almost like one of those chalky pastels, but once you put it together, it shines. It's gorgeous and it stays on forever. So here is the lip stain on. You can see it's quite jarring. It's a very mod pink. It's almost a little bit more of like a 70s pink because it does have that kind of technicolor aspect to it, but it has been toned up. So it's almost not as pastel white based as we would see in the 50s and 60s, but you're moving into that more like flower child-esque type of color association. I need to ground it. Right now, it feels very much like hot pink on top of white. It's almost like a pink lily pad on a white puddle. So I'm going to use my MAC pencil in the shade Sweet Talk. And it's a little tricky to find lip liner shades that work with this because for me and my color palette, and more importantly, my personal preferences, I need contrast to anchor this. Too much contrast makes things feel disjointed. So adding this shade, which this shade is classified as a muted mid-tone dirty pink, but you can see it adds depth to the color. If this is feeling too dark, you can always go back in with a little bit of your lip stain and just kind of go back and forth until you have something that you're happy with. I like the depth that we've got, but for me, this matte lip, even with the balm underneath, feels too dry. So this is where I like to use one of my favorites, Roman Glasting Gloss in the shade number 1, Peony Ballet. I love that this is a more long wearing gloss, but keep in mind it's a lip gloss, so even though it does have some lasting power, it's still gonna wear off, but just not as quickly as something that's like our traditional lip glosses that we are more accustomed to. So now something I like to do is I like to use a very lightweight setting mist, something that's gonna help to rehydrate the powder. So for me, MAC Fix Plus. And now is when I would go through and apply my mascara. I'm using my Maybelline Lash Sensational Firework Mascara in Black Brown. I'm going to go back to my Peripera palette with my blush brush. I am going to use the middle shade. This is like a really beautiful blush highlighter. I'm going to use this just to brighten up fronts of my cheeks. I also like to take this right on the nose. If I can, do you want me to share your name? So asking you as in subscribers, a lot of you recommend really great products and I purchased them. And I have in the past just said a subscriber mentioned it, but if you want me to use your name, if you're comfortable using using your name, let me know, because I would love to give you a proper shout out as a thank you. So today we're going to keep it neutral until I have confirmation what you all want. A subscriber mentioned this Maybelline Fit Me Press Powder in several comments. I was like, oh my goodness, I used to love that, and she loved it too. So I repurchased it in the same shade as the foundation I love, 112, and this is so gorgeous. You can use this on days when you want just a little bit of coverage. I believe the Maybelline website says this has medium coverage, but I find it great for just adding a little bit of touch-up throughout the day that never adds cake or heaviness. And then to lock it in place, I purchased the L'Oreal Infallible 3-Second Setting Mist during Amazon Prime Day because one of my friends loves the one size until dawn setting spray that I do, but she said she likes this better, so I'm curious to try this out. I actually prefer the sprayer on this. That was easy, and I don't find the smell or the taste is lingering in the air like it does with the one size. So that is a huge plus. Now to finish off today's video, let's take these clips out. Today I did a very quick curl. So yesterday I totally went through and did a like silk press style straightening on my hair. So for anyone who's unfamiliar, that is where we are doing multiple passes. I like to use a heat-resistant fine-tooth comb and a flat iron, and I do 3 really good passes. And when I'm doing my sections, I like to elevate so that way I get lift when it falls. And then today I went through with an 1.5-inch curling iron, and then I split my hair into 4 sections. So down the middle, top from bottom, and then I did 6 sections on the bottom, and I did 10 up top, and I left the fringe out. And then I did all of that with a 1.5-inch curling iron, curling away from the face. And that gave this look. To finish off my look, you know how much I love fragrances. And something I had the idea at the beginning of the month do was to put a fragrance on my skincare tray to use it as part of my everyday just routine, because I can always add something later in the day if I want to. So something that's nice, easy, and soft just for every day. And I started off using the Sarah Jessica Parker Lovely Sheer. This month I finished off my bottle of Born Lovely. It's so beautiful. I was wearing that at night. It's like a really nice, fresh, clean scent. I love it. This is so good. I would use this at night, but to my nose, there's a really beautiful brightness. I don't know if it's lemon or bergamot, but it has a nice, fresh, fruity brightness that I love, but it's almost like a slightly more vintage version of Dolce & Gabbana Light Blue. It has that kind of clean, slightly aquatic aspect to it, but it is a little bit more musky, because that's one of the beautiful parts about all of the Sarah Jessica Parker Lovely fragrances. They have this really beautiful, warm, feminine musk, and this also has a nice like floral boost. So I love this. This is my morning skincare staple, and I love this. I was like, oh my goodness, let me switch out. So 2 weeks ago, I brought in another fragrance that I left in my drawer. I haven't given it a lot of love because I find it to be a very difficult to wear fragrance. This is the Philosophy Amazing Grace Eau de Parfum Intense. This smells nothing like the original Amazing Grace. The original Amazing Grace, it's okay. It's a nice soapy, clean musk scent. This is a very synthetic rose lychee balm. It is so synthetic and it's screechy, and I've received compliments on it, but it's a weird one because if I do 2 sprays, which is what my nose can handle, it is gone in like 10 minutes. It is, I do not know how this is classified as an eau de parfum intense, because on my skin, if I spray 1 or 2 sprays, it disappears in minutes. If I bump up to 3, 4, it lasts for about 3 hours on my skin, which is still not great. Like I have eau de toilettes that perform better, but I get compliments on this from my husband. But if I do those 4 sprays, I need to go wash it off because I choke on it. It is so heavy and intense, and it's intriguing because rose and lychee are 2 of my favorite scents, but there's something about it in this formula that I just don't love. And you can see I've put a nice little dent in it. It's challenging to wear. I might shelve that and give it a go another day. For day to day, I have been using my Narciso Rodriguez Narciso Crystal. I love this. I've shared this in other videos how much I love this. This month, it's been so warm, it's been so humid, and I've just had a lot of different occasions, and unless I'm wearing something very specific, like some of these scents. Like other scents I've worn and loved throughout the month, we will quickly go over, but this has been my everyday grab and go, and it's a very soft scent. Like I become anosmic to it within 2-3 hours, but I've had this on where 10 hours later, I've had compliment where people are like, you smell so good. What are you wearing? And I don't even remember. And then my husband's like, oh, you smell like Narciso. And I'm like, oh, okay. So Narciso crystal. I love this. It's soft, pretty. If you like a fresh floral musk, if you want to smell like the most beautiful version of you freshly out of the shower, this is your fragrance. I love it. Some other ones I've really loved throughout the month are the Love Shack Fancy Love on the Beach. Fun, tropical, fruity, floral scent that is summer without being sunscreen. Ormond Jane Levant. This is gorgeous and I like it, but it's one that my husband finds a little strong. If you love a nice fresh rose that's seasonless, this is gorgeous. Another one I really love is Miami Nectar. If you want a spicy summer scent that feels tropical with some depth and sex appeal to it, this is your fragrance. Sometimes with the word sex appeal, it can come off a little vulgar. This is sexy without being vulgar. It just has a little bit of a flirtation. When I spoke about this in a video, I compared this to having like pineapple with tahini, a little bit fresh and fruity, but also a little spicy. And then another grab and go I love is my Jo Malone English Pear and Sweet Pea. This is one of my favorite Jo Malone scents, but very classic Jo Malone. It lasts for about an hour to hour and a half, 2 hours if you're lucky, and then it's gone. So when you want something that's fleeting but happy and you're okay with reapplying, this is great. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did recording it. Let me know some of your favorites from the month of July, and let me know if you have any big plans going to August. For me, I am so excited to start revamping and working on just creating a new autumn-friendly health and fitness routine and preparing for holiday season, because as scary as it is to say, it will be here before you know it, and I'm excited. I'm excited for every day step and skip into the holiday season because that's one of my favorite times of years. I love all these colder weather occasions with your friends. They're so just fun and cozy and intimate. It's just so much fun. Let me know your plans for the following month and let me know anything that's happened to you throughout July that you want to share. Until we see each other again, I hope you're taking care of yourself forever as you are in the world. Bye, y'all.